again.
Welcome to, what is it, day 3 of the home yoga retreat? The days, like all days.
I thought you were going to say which day of the quarantine.
Yeah, oh my goodness, no, I couldn't possibly do the countdown.
Let's not do that. We're day 3 of our fabulous home retreat.
And have you got the days marked on your wall?
It says desperate scratches on the wall.
On your apartment wall. So today I'm joined by Adam Hocke, who is such an amazing teacher, so full of wisdom and humor at normal times. I'm not quite sure how things are bearing up in Adam's apartment. Well, like us all, it's this whole thing of being here now. It's not that easy. And I think that we've all been going through some real highs and lows. Yesterday, it was lovely because we had a great chat with Lucy about the different philosophical sort of threads that it would be to be here, to be here now, and different ways that yoga sort of looks at things. But I think that everybody's got their own take and their own flavor on it. So that is quite a nice thing. Oh, Kathy is joining us from the garden.
People coming in.
Look at that. That is super. And hi, Frankie. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the massage and hugs. Oh, I know. Aren't we all missing the hugs, right?
Oh, gosh. Well, we can talk about the power of hugging yourself, but we won't. I'll keep it stitched up for now. Yeah, we'll save that.
I'm looking forward to that, because one thing that I've been thinking of, because I shared a photo of us two having a hug when we saw each other filming, and I thought, oh, it's been a while. And then I'm now looking at the effects of visualizing things instead of, when you can't do something and you can visualize. Yeah. What are the effects of that? And actually, I think that the effects are pretty similar to actual real hugging. So we should all be sort of giving each other more virtual hugs and showing pictures of the hugs.
Yeah.
More. So yes, please, from Kate. I know, right? Oh, yes. And yes, in the garden for Emma as well. That is brilliant. And how are you all guys getting on? I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear how you're all doing and how lockdown is treating you and how you're going with your moving into this presence. Virtual hugs to go. Ben from Heptonstall, West Yorkshire. I know it. That is beautiful area of the world. Lovely to have you from. I hope it's as sunny as it is for us here. So, Adam, let's launch in.
Yeah, I thought it'd be nice before we get chatting, because I know the two of us can chat and chat and chat, that we'll start with a little short meditation. Really, it's a check-in. And I believe it is in the self-care flow practice. I think we start with this one. So we're going to start with the self-compassion check-in. And I think self-compassion is essential for mindfulness, which we'll get into, and it's essential for yoga asana and any form of wellness practice. We want to make sure we're coming in with that attitude. So we're going to do the check-in to make sure we can develop it. So you can either lie down if you're happy lying down where you are, or you can do it seated is fine. Close your eyes or otherwise turn inward, and you can turn inward without closing your eyes if that helps. There's nothing to see on the screen, so you can just listen to my words. And first, just let yourself stop. Let yourself experience quiet, doing nothing, and simply being, which, as we know, can be quite hard when everything outside or even inside our homes is a little scary and stressful and frightening. And see what comes up when you go quiet, when you stop doing. And I would imagine something's going to come up that is related to whatever stress or pain or anxiety or annoyance or suffering you're currently experiencing. So you can gravitate to one of those words: stress, anxiety, suffering, pain, whatever it may be. And say to yourself, whatever you're feeling, this is just a moment of suffering. This is just a moment of anxiety, a moment of pain, a moment right now. This is just a moment of suffering. And then, quite importantly, say to yourself, everyone has these moments. Everyone, especially now, is experiencing some variety of these moments of stress or anxiety or pain or suffering or worry. Everyone has these moments. Next, say to yourself, today I'm going to respond with kindness. Today I'm going to respond with kindness, friendship, and care. And we'll recognize that this is not easy and sometimes it's hard to access these feelings. So we'll use a visual to help us, for now at least, understand what kindness tastes like, feels like. So we'll go into a visualization. First, go to a safe, happy, comfortable place in your mind and your memory. And it can be real or imagined. It can be very rich with memory and association, or it can be very broad, like a beach. But go to a safe, comfortable place that you feel well held and cared for. Into that place comes someone who epitomizes to you love and kindness and care. And it can be someone you know well from your current life or your past experiences, or it can be an archetype. It could be a character from a book, or it can be a religious figure. But someone has come into your safe place that to you epitomizes love and care. Look to them. What do they say to you? How do they look at you? Do they offer you a touch, a hug, a gesture? Stay in this place. Stay with this person. And stay with whatever they're doing to help you feel loved. And just take 3 or 4 breaths. And know that you can access that feeling of love and kindness and care. It's there. You've created it just now. And you can direct it towards yourself. Last couple breaths. This is a moment of suffering. Everyone has these moments. Today, I will respond with kindness. If you want to bow to close or just touch your body and feel the ground, do that. And then we'll come back. to me, that's a very powerful practice.
Yeah, I've gone all quiet.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a good sign. I think
It's a really good sign. It was lovely. It was absolutely lovely. And interesting, but I started to go on about visualizations, and then the visualization happened. I like that.
Yeah, it's that compassionate imagery visualization is quite powerful, and it comes from a lot of people's work and research and study, and it's something I've been working with a lot, and I find very helpful now that we're seeing the same things, the same people. We need to play through what we already have, which is a deep well of memory and love.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think sometimes it's hard if you tell people to access memories of being loved and cared for. That can be triggering for some people.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not been a easy go at it for them. But
Yeah.
I think we have all had some moments of simple kindness and care if we've made it this far.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to feel that, it's very, very, very powerful. I'd love to find out how everybody out in your gardens have found that, and if you felt that as a powerful practice that I did. We've got so many people have joined here. Hiya, Sandy. Love your shirt, Adam.
So we'll model.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Hi, Heidi. Hello, Diane. I went to high school with your parents.
Okay. Norland High, Miami. All right.
Wow. What's the chances?
I think my mom has something to do with this. If my mom is watching and you can figure out how to comment, you can say hello. Yes.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. And Diana in sunny Lyme Regis. Hiya, Susanna. It's lovely to hear from you. Hiya, Julia. Hello, Emma from Dorset. And I'm glad to hear that Hepton's stall is also glorious, Ben. Hi, Kate. Lovely to see you here today. Emma, I think that lockdown has been a chance to use memory on emotional level to feel liberated and to travel in the imagination of memory. It's funny, isn't it? Lots of sort of things are coming up, I think, for lots of people in sort of dreams and wakingness, like memories, because we've basically put ourselves on pause for a bit, and we have no, as you say, the real life is very limited. It's limited.
I mean, we have no choice but to be here now, because we can't do anything else. And my mom is here, so I gotta say, hi, Mom, welcome to Facebook Live. Okay.
Oh, hiya. Isn't that lovely? If we're lucky, I'll get my mum will come on.
Yes. So should we talk about be here now?
Let's do it.
Get to the nitty gritty.
Mm-hmm.
So be here now, to me, is just a simple way of describing mindfulness. I think it's a definition of mindfulness. And it's just so simple and clear. I mean, I usually use the Jon Kabat-Zinn definition of mindfulness, which is paying attention on purpose to the present moment without judgment. And there are a couple things that are potentially hard about that. Okay.
There's a few, actually.
Well, yeah, there's thousands upon thousands of things that are very hard about mindfulness, but two that we'll pick apart. One is the non-judgment of whatever arises. And stemming off from that is sticking with the mindfulness when mindfulness brings up nothing but pain and discomfort and reveals your stress and anxiety. When you stop and allow quiet and listen, and what comes up isn't, rainbows and unicorns, it is quite tough. And that's when usually people just abandon the practice or run away and think it's not for them. But that's, to me, when the practice begins, is going in to the discomfort, going into, as Pema Chodron says the places that scare you. And that is when you can do that, that is when transformation happens, when you can be present and be kind to the stuff that tortures you or causes you suffering or makes you behave poorly or makes you go into addiction. That is when transformation happens. So, like, how do you have non-judgment? How do you stick with it when it's tough? And there are lots of techniques, but the one that is most important to me is what we started with, which is the underlying attitude of kindness and care, of compassion and self-friendship. Mm-hmm. And that is essential. I think it's absolutely essential. And I think it's especially essential for us asana practitioners, people who do postural yoga, because I think if we go in, and especially if you're like me and you like a reasonable degree of physicality, like you like doing some of the hard stuff and you like feeling your muscles and you like moving and you like doing stuff that can be potentially really strong and demanding. If you go in with the wrong attitude, it's just another way to beat yourself up.
Yes.
And distract yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you come in with the right attitude, then it's a method of transformation. So we have to cultivate the attitude of self-friendship, kindness, and compassion. And we can just reflect on that for a moment, because it's a big ask. It's a big ask. But I think there are ways we can do it. You know, I've been watching, if we're throwing big terms out, I've been watching a lot of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things I'm doing because I have a lot of time on my hands. Mm-hmm. So I'm watching a lot of Star Wars. And of course, in Star Wars, they have the Force. Mm-hmm. So we're either like grabbing a whole chunk of the audience right now or losing them terribly. But there's this idea of the Force, which is just George Lucas's way of talking about Eastern religion, philosophy, and chi and all the stuff. But you can use the Force in a very bad way, or you can use the good side of the Force. And we're trying to make sure the work we're doing is imbued with an attitude of care and kindness and goodness, because I think the attitude is important. And this comes from Buddhist teachings. I really love the name of it. They're called the Four Immeasurables, which is just such a fascinating term, the Four Immeasurables. And the first one, there are lots of different definitions of it or translations, but the first one is unconditional friendship or loving kindness. Thich Nhat Hanh just calls it love. Second one is self-compassion. Third is joy. And the fourth is equanimity. And these are, the four immeasurables. So they're so important. They're part of the Tibetan mind training. So it's goes into all the meditation techniques that you have this attitude. It transforms the work you do to make sure that it is done with the right attitude and the right towards the right outcome. Mm-hmm. And then, so there's that sort of Tibetan view of it. But then I'm also so the self-compassion check-in comes from the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, who's a leading researcher on self-compassion. And basically, anything you want to look up to see if self-compassion makes it better, you'll find it makes it better.
It does. Yeah.
So the attitude of teaching people to be self-compassionate, and we can look at the sort of nuts and bolts of it in a second. But to her, there are three components of self-compassion. Number one being kindness towards yourself, big surprise. Second being mindfulness. And the third being shared humanity.
Interesting.
So even though it's about yourself, it is only accessible if you see your place in relationship to others and realize you're not alone in whatever you're feeling, which is why in the self-compassion check-in, it's very important that we say, everyone has these feelings. Everyone has these moments. Everyone is going through this. Everyone is going through some form of having to be home under quarantine. You know, of course, it's wildly different, and some people are privileged and others are not. But this is a unique moment where we have a lot of shared suffering and humanity, and that I find enormously helpful to know you're not alone. Which is lovely that we can have these moments now and talk to our community. Well, I always think that when I'm teaching a yoga class, that it is helping people understand their place within humanity, that they're not alone, that they're not unique individuals with unique problems. But that's when it's really rough, when you think I'm the only one feeling this. It's when you know that so many other people feel this too. It seems a bit more bearable. So we see how people are responding to my long monologue. Let's see. Let's see how we're going.
Said, self-compassion, and I relate to this, Emma. Self-compassion is a tricky one when your background has been self-criticism and self-depreciation. Yes.
Yes, and a lot of that is parenting and culture and what we think actually motivates people. But self-criticism, you may think like, oh, if I criticize myself, I'll work harder. I'll be better at my job, but does not bear out under study. So you're more likely, so if we want to make this task oriented, say it's about work and productivity, you're more likely to return to a task that challenges you, or that you've made mistakes or you've had failures, if you have a compassionate attitude. There is a future path. If you think, all right, that was tough.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing sadness and disappointment with myself because I messed up. But I know I'm not alone in this. So many people have made mistakes. All my colleagues have made mistakes at some point or another. All my family members have made mistakes. I'm going to be kind and say, what do I need? What do I need to take the next step? Is it just I take the afternoon off and breathe and rest, and I can return with clarity? And if you do those sorts of steps, you are more likely to keep going. If you think, I just screwed royally up, I'm a disappointment, I always do this, I'm just, I am the worst person in the world, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, right.
And of course, that's easier said than done to change the attitude. But that's why we practice it. We practice it continually, and we practice it in meditation, and we practice it in asana. So when real life challenges come, we're prepared. We're prepared to see things a little bit more clearly, which is why mindfulness is important. Because if you're practicing mindfulness meditation, one of the things you're developing is that witness attitude, that you see your thoughts coming and going. You see them as thoughts independent of what is essential about you. And you can see when you're getting triggered by something, or you're going down this sort of thought spiral, and you have a moment of pause, and you can behave differently. But that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Oh, I like Sandy's question. Sandy's question is really good. So Sandy just asked, why do we have the monkey mind with the mean old chatter? Why is our default so self-criticizing? So this is something, there's a quote from Rick Hanson, who wrote a brilliant book. So Raka, you can add it to the reading list. Buddha's Brain. So that book is about where Buddhism and neuroscience meet. Hopefully I can say this without screwing it up, that the mind is Velcro to negative experiences and Teflon to positive. Because this is evolutionary. it's far more important, if we're thinking of our survival, to remember mistakes we've made rather than successes. Because mistakes, like the last time I went down to that valley, a tiger chased me. Let me remember that and have nightmares about that for the rest of my life means you will survive and won't be reckless when there are tigers about. But we don't need those types of attitudes now. We need to understand that our brain will latch on to negative memory because of that survival instinct. So we have to be vigilant and we have to be proactive about being positive or reinforcing when positive things happen. That like we want to replace our self-criticism with that positive attitude, which is not ignoring the bad stuff that happens, but it's planting seeds of positive thought.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah, Rachel's got a good question, I thought, as well. I'd love to hear more about how to couple self-compassion with strong asana practice, in particular non-attachment to particular poses that you might be trying to get, something that she struggles with. And this is a very normal struggle.
Yeah. So I always think, why am I practicing any of these poses? So you have to understand your intentions coming in. So let's Rachel, you can tell me what pose it is, or I can make up one, but we'll get there in a second. I always want to start my practices, and I always do with the teaching, with a check-in where we ask ourselves how we're feeling. We give a self-compassion attitude check if we need it. And we also ask, what do I need out of this practice? Why am I coming to practice today? And it may be, I'm stressed out and I need to down-regulate my nervous system so I can be a kinder person and I can sleep and I can do work and I can read and I can just enjoy life. I just need to down-regulate. It may be, I need to up-regulate. I'm depressed. I'm feeling low. I need to boost my energy. Or it may be, I just want to move and have fun. And you just come in and make sure you know what your needs are out of a practice. And I think all of those are fine. So she says she's working on forearm stand. Okay. And then you go in and think, all right, I'm coming into forearm stand today. I just want to do it because it's fun. So then you go in with a very light attitude. Hopefully you go in with a light attitude, and you remember that it's a ridiculous thing to do a forearm stand. It's hugely demanding on strength and flexibility, and you got to have a good sense of humor and a light touch about it. If you've gotten very hot and heavy about it, then yes, you got to deal with your attachment and think, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for the sake of the fun, or do I think I'm going to get something if I accomplish it? Or am I doing this because this type of strengthening and focus helps me feel more embodied, and by feeling more embodied, I can get out of negative self-talk, or I can get out of my normal patterns if I get in my body. And I think you should just know, just question, why do I need forearm stand? And then you can set a path, and you can set boundaries and limits of how much you'll work on it or not. And when you just say, I fell over, who cares? And as someone, I'll tell you this too, as someone who can balance perfectly fine in forearm balance and forearm stand, there are no prizes.
Oh.
And no, you don't take a picture of it and suddenly more people come into your life. It's just a thing to do. And then it'll go away eventually, because your body will change or your life will change.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. And I think that this is also touched a nerve for Jada as well. I love reminding myself of this. Our self-criticism is there to protect us. It helps me find compassion for myself and more at peace when I criticize myself. But that's the thing. That's a really important thing to remember, I think, because I'm terrible at self-criticism. I'm a sort of perfectionist, annoying type to myself and others, and it's really not a great character trait for compassion.
Yeah, but you also don't want to criticize yourself for being self-critical. This is where we suffer over suffering, and it just spirals and so we got to be careful and recognize, number one, how human is it and normal for us to have these sometimes viewed as desirable traits.
Mm-hmm.
So how absolutely human and normal that we feel this. But you have to also then be mindful enough. So this is why mindfulness practice is important, that you see the behavior before you're wrapped up into it. You see the triggers, you see the words and the activities and the actions that you're about to undertake forming in your brain before you do them. So the meditation and the mindfulness practice helps you have that moment of pause. So you see the thing before you do it. And then you may still end up doing it, but oh, that is not coming from a place of kindness and care. And then the more you can lengthen that pause, the more you might have the power to make a different decision with whatever is triggering you. And it's hard, but that's why we're practicing mindfulness. That's why we're practicing self-compassion.
Yeah.
That's why we're remembering our shared humanity. And so all this is the important part of the self-compassion. So it has to be a continual practice. And you have to create that underlying attitude that no matter what, I am worthy of love and care, and I'm going to give it to myself. No matter how much I screw up, if I make mistakes, if I'm a total failure in my job, I am still worthy of love and care. And you got to convince yourself of that through daily practice. Because if you're operating from a place of fear of failure, you're going to be, chasing that dragon for a long time.
Yeah, you get kind of sad and burnt out as well.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to see that I'm not alone. So thanks for holding
You are not alone. You see people in the chat.
That's it.
You're not alone. Yeah.
That's good. And this is interesting that Heidi has also taken on when you don't take yourself as seriously. She got into her best crow pose.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, isn't it? If we can let go of the seriousness of it all.
That's why humor is so important to me, because it breaks through this attitude of I can or I can't. Like there's this whole, middle ground of just play and experience. And that to me is the fun bit of life.
Yeah, and it's important to go back to that as well. Yeah.
Oh, I love what Frankie has said, is that things that worked in the past may not work for you in the current moment. And you sort of thank them for their service and you move forward. We're a work in progress.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about how we like the tools. I want to get to nuts and bolts about tools of working with uncomfortable things that come up. Because I think one of the first conversations we had, and like in your kitchen, over some big plate of pasta after I filmed 5,000 classes, was about how I've always viewed at least dynamic vinyasa, like strong yoga, as a practice of discomfort, not of I'm doing this just because it's going to feel great and it's going to feel juicy. And it's like that talk has never appealed to me. It has always been hard.
Yeah, I remember this.
But the practice for me has been, can I deal with that hard thing? Can I not lose my head when I fail or fall over? Can I laugh about it? Can I breathe when things are tough? Can I learn stress resilience? And can I take those lessons of stress resilience to me when I meet stresses that don't involve, balancing on one hand? So like that is how I view vinyasa, which maybe other people don't, but that is how I've always viewed it. So dealing with discomfort is just what excites me. And I think there are bad ways to deal with discomfort. And that may be run, get me out of here. Stop. No, thank you. I just want to do happy things. And when we get into that attitude, and we can't just run away from something, because it's hard to run away from grief or depression or anxiety, that's when addictions happen. And addiction doesn't mean just alcohol and drug or food. There can be addictive behaviors and things that you do just to not be here now. You'll do that other thing to be somewhere else in a different time because you don't want to be here now. So that's where addictions come. And sometimes I even think yoga with the wrong attitude is an addiction. If you're just hitting that mat 90 minutes every day because you don't want to think about or feel what you have going on, it's an addiction. And it's a better addiction than most. But then what happens when your wrist hurts and you can't do what you wanted to do anymore? What happens when you age and you can't do the type of practice you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think that I also I definitely fell into that category where I was a sort of 2-hour a day practitioner of really, really, very physical stuff. And then it was exactly that. I got into a car crash, couldn't move. And I was like, I can't do yoga.
Maybe for the first time you did yoga.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So that to me is when it becomes yoga, is when it's about dealing with suffering. Because we got to think about where this stuff comes from. These postures were not invented in, a beautiful beach in California, as much as some popular culture may tell us. They emerged from India, and they emerged from practices that were dealing with suffering. That is where they emerged from. And if we're not going to do that work, we shouldn't call it yoga. Right? It's fine. Go do movement practices if that's what you're into. But if you want to do yoga, you're dealing with suffering. You're dealing with your stuff. And that is why it's so powerful, if you want it to be. So you can deal with discomfort in the bad way. You can hightail it out, or you can open that second bottle of wine, or that Haagen-Dazs, or whatever else it is, or that I'm going to watch that 5th episode on Netflix tonight. It can be that thing, maybe. But there are really good ways of dealing with discomfort. And to me, the first and most important one is the underlying attitude. Like, you got to train. You got to do that. It comes from mind training. Lojong Tibetan mind training is this attitude of working with compassion, working with pain and suffering, which we'll get to. Embodiment. So the self-care flow practice that was, I think, was today's practice, wasn't it?
Yes, self-care flow. It's brilliant.
Which is funny because I filmed that like 6-7 months ago. And I was just thinking, in my mind, I was thinking, let's give people a practice to deal with like whatever they feel about Boris, whatever they feel about Trump, whatever they feel about, something to help them calm down. And then
political emergencies. And now there's
it became really, I'm glad I did it.
I'm glad you did it.
Because it's the type of work I'm doing now for myself. But embodiment is really important. Embodiment gets us out of the part of the brain that is replaying past events that depressed us, or imagining future events that make us anxious. If we can get into embodiment, then we have a little, it might be distraction, but it also is training us to actually feel the reality of what we are feeling in the present moment. So on one level, if we get embodied, we are out of the chatter temporarily, but we're training ourselves to be more aware and more sensitive to the actual feelings experienced in our body. Because the other bit of this is when you can learn to ask yourself when you're anxious or depressed or suffering, well, all right, those are words and that's a story. Is there a physical symptom to that? Am I just anxious and I'm thinking all these thoughts, or am I anxious and my heartbeat is up and I'm breathing quickly? Or my digestion is bad,
Mm-hmm.
or I have a jittery leg, or I'm depressed and that's manifesting because I know my back is tight again, and that happens when I'm feeling depressed. And when you can deal with the physical symptoms
Mm-hmm.
with the attitude of care and kindness, then it's just like it becomes a circular thing. The embodied stuff helps the mental emotional stuff, and it just becomes this beautiful circle around that we can heal and transform ourselves through embodiment. But it has to be, again, with that attitude of kindness and care, which is why I do a lot of having people touch their own bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually say something to the effect of, bring your hands on your body.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, everyone can do this now. So just bring your hands on your body. Let's do it. There are your hands. You feel your hands. Are you touching yourself like you're a mannequin or an object? Or are you offering a little bit of care?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's hard for you to think about, you could think, well, how do I hold or touch someone I love? Maybe it's a partner, a child, a dog. What type of feeling and kindness would be going through my hands? And you don't even have to move. It just changes the quality. And then it becomes something different. And if we can touch ourselves with that attitude and feel with that attitude, then I think everything starts shifting. And you can relax your hands if your hands are still there. The other bit of it is hugging. So from hugging from other people, touch from other people releases chemicals in us that helps us manage stress and anxiety, which some of you might know. So there is a chemical benefit to hugging people and going to other people when you're stressed out and asking for care and that touch, and it calms you down. Mm-hmm. But you also get some of that if you self-soothe and you give yourself hug and you give yourself touch. You get some of that chemical. So the self-soothing, self-touch that we do in some of my practices has a chemical benefit, but I think it's also just changing your relationship with self. I'm sure many people, especially who come to yoga and strong yoga, have had some sort of adversarial relationship with their body at some point in time and wanted to beat it into submission or change the shape of it. And perhaps some of that still lingers. So we need to change the way that we deal with our embodiment. Mm-hmm. Other tool is restorative yoga, which is why it's funny when I go and record these things. The guys who record will sometimes have to film me in Shavasana for a very long time. But I feel really committed to having long Shavasanas. And I've recorded, you have videos, 15 minutes of me lying down.
Quality. But it's also really important because even if the teacher says, stay as long as you can, just by watching somebody else lying down, it gives you permission to do that. And I definitely have longer Shavasanas when the teacher has a longer Shavasana.
Yeah. So the thing about restorative is that you have to be quiet and be with your stuff. But because you're lying down, because you're comforted by blanket, the nervous system is getting all these signals that everything is okay. Mm-hmm. And chemically and heart rate wise, everything is saying, you're all right. There's no need to be stressed. So you're having this physical response of relaxation while your brain is maybe playing through whatever it needs to play through. So you change your relationship to it. Mm-hmm. Like if you're a person that sits or stews around your apartment replaying some past incident, if instead you said, maybe I will just lie down with a bolster in pristine comfort and warmth and just really relax as best as I can. And even if it's still playing, I've changed my relationship to that stress and that memory. I've had a different physical experience with it. And I think that's really powerful work for me.
Mm.
I want to make sure we address some of the questions that came up, and then maybe we'll do a closing practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a question from Lara. Can you explain the line between suffering and pain that might damage you?
All right. So pain is pain. Pain. So this is well, this is usually the analogy I work with, which now makes no more sense to people because we can't do it. But like, you go on the airplane and you put on the seat, like the seat belt, and the buckle's really tight. You'll feel like, oh, there is, it's poking into me. That's pain.
Mm-hmm.
The suffering is, why does this always happen to me? I always have a problem when I'm on a plane. Why couldn't I have this? Everyone else is fine. Why has this happened to me? I paid so much for this flight. I didn't even want to go. And then it's become something else.
Mm-hmm.
So we understand the difference between pain and suffering. Suffering is perception, is your relationship to the pain. Pain is pain. Grief is grief. Disease is disease. All of that stuff you can't avoid.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen in your life. And it's part of it. Like, you want to have the lows so you can have the highs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you didn't have the lows, you wouldn't even know what joy felt like. Pain is going to happen. So you are, of course, sensitive to pain. We're programmed to be sensitive to pain. We're programmed to know when things threaten us. Mm. So that's good, healthy. But then the mindfulness is seeing when pain transforms into suffering, which is your perception in the story and the spiral that has nothing to do with the actual thing happening in the moment. It's not about being here now with that pain. It's about stuff spiraling wildly out of control everywhere else. It's like, no, just here, now. That's the pain. Suffering, it's your perception. What else we got?
There's a lot of interesting people making interesting comments. It's interesting for me to have hands on the torso and bend in half salutations. Yeah, I must say I found that really hard as well. It's like, what?
Different, doing something different. Oh!
I couldn't possibly do that.
And there were some questions about resistance, which I think a few people resisting suffering, resisting doing the practice.
Yeah,
that I find interesting.
So Sandy's question or comment that yoga makes me feel better, but it's hard to get on the mat when you feel depressed or low. And we all know that feeling. Like, when you're feeling depressed, all you want to do is sit on the sofa and eat chocolate or whatever. And you have to force yourself, but then you immediately feel better once you do.
This is why discipline, this is a practice of discipline. No one said it's going to be easy to retrain your mind or to form a different relationship with your body. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard every day. And it's a continual practice of discipline. It's not meant to be easy. No text about yoga will tell you it's easy. Every text will say it is a continual practice that you got to work on constantly over a great period of time with a good attitude. But you don't have to be hard on yourself. And I would say, try to be consistent about the easy things, like checking in with how you're feeling and asking yourself, what do I need to feel better? What do I need to be kind to myself in a moment? You wake up, you're depressed, you're tired, things ache. Of course, it's going to be hard to get on a mat. You just want to lie down with the ice cream. But you could also lie down for 1 minute and think, what would make me feel better? What would truly, like, based on my experience, I know that ice cream or whatever your thing is might give me a few minutes of happiness, but then I might feel worse later. What will, if I am honest with myself and being disciplined, what will actually make me feel better? Am I disciplined? Am I committed? Am I invested in myself enough to give myself that? You got to do the work. Otherwise, there's the the saying. Hopefully I won't. I'm always fearful when I like remember some quote, but we'll see if I can say it correctly. Is that we hate suffering, but we love its causes. So that comes from I think it's the way of the Bodhisattva, Shantideva. But we hate suffering. We do not like feeling like crap. But we love doing all the stuff that keep us there. So we just gotta pony up and realize this is hard work, but that's okay. We're in it together. Lots of people are in this boat, and we have a sense of humor about it. And some days it's also fine to do nothing. But no, this is where mindfulness is important. Know when you are distracting. Know when you are avoiding, and say, all right, it's okay if I do that today, but I'm going to keep working on this. Forgive yourself if you think you did something that caused you suffering. Forgive yourself. It's okay. We all do it. And then you just start again the next day.
And then pony up. That's a great phrase.
Hashtag pony up.
This is funny from Amy. Well, I now feel bad as I'm eating chocolate.
Oh, Amy, enjoy those biscuits. Enjoy them. It was a good choice and a treat. Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Enjoy them.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about sort of eating the Pringles while you watch the yoga class.
I hope someone is doing my class at the moment with the Pringles and a
with the Pringles just watching it.
Yeah, fine glass of red.
Oh dear, that's hysterical. Yeah, and this is good. So this made sense to Nala. Interested in what you said about avoiding discomfort and yoga being a vehicle for that. I hadn't made the direct link to that, being drawn to addictions. Yeah, I think there definitely is something, and especially there tends to be a kind of person who's attracted to a very dynamic kind of a class who wants to do that kind of thing. I mean, I fell right into that.
We all have, and then eventually you work your way through that, or it just runs out. The novelty runs out, and you think this isn't working anymore like it used to, and then you gotta either choose something else, or you look at it a little bit more closely and you see what can truly help you.
Yeah, I like that, and thank you, Raki, for adding that other one on the book list.
Okay, that might be a tough read, but it's there.
yeah, it's not the easiest. Yeah, I think that's been really, really helpful. I'd love to hear any other questions that people might have of Adam now we have you here. But of course, you can ask questions as well afterwards, and if something occurs to you. But I think that's a really interesting sort of thing that we've been talking about, discovering the line between pain, discomfort, why we do our practice, why the discipline is important, and the fact that you can't kind of avoid it. That is, this is an embodiment practice, and it needs to be practiced every day, and it's an important one because then we do relate, we get back into our bodies, and that is a way of dealing with all of this stuff in our minds that we might be going through during times like this.
Yes, interesting times.
I'd
love to close us with a compassion meditation.
Perfect.
And we'll do a very brief version of it. And I think it's also in the self-care flow. But I wanted to explain it first. And it is Tong Blend practice, which translates roughly to giving and taking, or sending and receiving. And what it is a practice which may seem unusual, but it's a practice where you take in suffering, take it in, you don't resist it, and you give out compassion and kindness and care. So it is a practice that you can do for yourself, you can do for people in the moment that you're with, and you can do it for people you don't know. And we'll do a little bit of each. It comes from the Lojong mind training in Tibetan Buddhism. So I think I may have misspoke earlier. So Tong Blend is from Lojong training. The idea of self-compassion, loving kindness, joy and equanimity comes from the Four Immeasurables, which is another Buddhist teaching. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do Tong Blend. And all you need to do is either lie down and sit and make sure you're comfortable and alert. You can close your eyes or you can look down. And we'll begin just noticing the breath, noticing what your body feels like and how it is touching the ground or your chair or wherever you are. So have a real sense of who you are and where you are in this moment. And when you inhale, imagine that you're inhaling something dark and it maybe feels a little bit heavy inside of you. And as you exhale, that pressure is released, that heaviness is released, and it comes out light and bright. You inhale dark and heavy, and you exhale light and bright. Just one more of those. Slowly in and out. And we're about to have 3 visitors. The first visitor that we see as we breathe is a version of ourselves, let's say as a child, in a moment of suffering. We see ourselves as a child in a moment when we were suffering. And we look that version of ourselves in the eye. We don't resist. We breathe in the suffering. And we breathe out kindness and care. We breathe in, we take it in. We breathe out kindness and care. One more breath with our child self. Then we wish them good luck. And we give them whatever form of goodbye makes sense to us, whatever word or gesture. Our next visitor is someone we know well, now or from the past, in their moment of suffering. And make sure it's something you're comfortable with dealing with in this moment. It can sometimes be a bit overwhelming, this practice. So something you are able to hold in this space. And breathe in their suffering. And breathe out your kindness and care to them. And we'll do that a couple more breaths. Then we wish them good luck. And we say goodbye in an appropriate way. Our final visitor is someone we don't know, maybe someone we've seen in the news or can imagine, who in this moment is suffering. Look them in the eyes, witness their suffering, breathe it in, breathe out kindness and care and love. And repeat that. And then you can wish them good luck and goodbye. Come back to your own breath, your own body in this moment, right here, right now. If you want, you can bow to close or touch the floor around you. And raise your head, open your eyes. And what I find interesting about this is that even though we take in suffering, it somehow widens our heart. So whatever we take in, it forces our heart to grow. And as I said, these come from this attitude of kindness and compassion, come from the four immeasurables. So much of it, so much love and compassion, capacity within us as individuals and within us as society. Mm-hmm. But we got to do the work and the practices. Otherwise, it fritters away. So good luck, all of you, and have a good attitude. And remember, it's hard work. And whatever challenges or resistance you face or pain or suffering you experience is totally human and normal, and you're not alone in it. And people have been writing about it for hundreds, thousands of years. That's why we do these things.
Well, thank you very, very much, Adam. There's a lot of food for thought and a lot of that meditation does change your mind.
It's been very important to me for a long time. It's often explained that because we're suffering, why don't we use that suffering for good use? It helps us relate to other people and brings us together rather than dividing us.
Absolutely. And that's what it's about at this time especially. So
yeah,
thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kat.
Chuff for that. And thank you everybody joining us and for all of your questions, for your comments, for contributing so generously. And as I said before, it's easy to sort of sit back and take everything in, and it's less easy to contribute. So I really thank you for doing that because it really helps everybody. Thank you. All right, take care, and I'll see you tomorrow night, everyone.
Bye.